The many events and elements that make up a life and are spelled out in the data, from health factors and education to income. The researchers use that data to create long patterns of recurring life events to feed into their model. Taking the transformer model approach used to train ELMS on language and adapting it for a human life represented as a sequence of events. The whole story of a human life, in a way, can also be thought of as a giant long sentence of the many things that can happen to a person, says Lehman, a professor of networks and complexity science at D2 Compute, Technical University of Denmark, and previously a postdoctoral fellow at Northeastern. The model uses the information it learns from observing millions of life event sequences to build what is called vector representations in embedding spaces, where it starts to categorize and draw connections between life events like income, education, or health factors. These embedding spaces serve as foundation for the predictions the model ends up making. One of the life events that the researchers predicted was a person's probability of mortality. When we visualize the space that the model uses to make predictions, it looks like a long cylinder that takes you from low probability of death to high probability of death, Lehman says. Then we can show that in the end, where there's high probability of death, a lot of those people actually died. And in the end, where there's low probability of dying, the causes of death are something that we couldn't predict, like car accidents. The paper also illustrates how the model is capable of predicting individual answers to a standard personality questionnaire, specifically when it comes to extroversion. Ilyas Rad and Lehman note that although the model makes highly accurate predictions, they are based on correlations, highly specific cultural and societal contexts, and the kinds of biases that exist in every data set. This kind of tool is like an observatory of society and not all societies, Ilyas Rad says. This study was done in Denmark, and Denmark has its own culture, its own laws, and its own societal rules. Whether this can be done in America is a different story. Given all those caveats, Ilyas Rad and Lehman view their predictive model less like an end product and more like the beginning of a conversation. Lehman says major tech companies have likely been creating these kinds of predictive algorithms for years in locked rooms. He hopes this work can start to create a more open, public understanding of how these tools work, what they are capable of, and how they should and shouldn't be used. The other path ahead is to say, once we can make these accurate predictions about everything because we just chose to things, but we can predict all kinds of things which are the ones we want to implement in democratic societies. Lehman says.